They stole our land, we stole their water. Desert justice served cold. The dust devils danced across the parched fields, mocking our desperation. Harmony Valley wasn't living up to its name anymore. It was more like Barren Valley. For 3 generations, my family had coaxed life from this stubborn land, scratching a living from the rocky soil. But this drought, this was different. This felt deliberate. AgriCorp arrived like a swarm of locusts, all promises and shiny brochures. They offered prices for land that made your head spin, deals that seemed too good to be true. Old man Hemlock, bless his weathered soul, saw right through them. "They ain't here for the tomatoes, Caleb," he'd rasped, his voice like dry leaves skittering across concrete. "They're here for the water." Most of us, we held out. This wasn't just land, it was our history, our blood. But some folks, struggling to make ends meet, the offers were too tempting. One by one, farms fell silent, replaced by surveyors and blueprints. Then, the water started to disappear. Our well ran dry first. Sarah, my wife. She tried to stay strong, but I saw the worry etched on her face. She knew as well as I did what a dry well meant. It meant the end. The crops withered, the cattle thinned, and the air grew thick with despair. We watched our livelihood, our heritage, slowly choking to death. Hank, my best friend since we were kids, was ready to grab his shotgun and head upriver. He's always been the fiery one. "They're stealing from us, Caleb. We gotta do something. Violence ain't the answer, Hank," I told him, though a part of me agreed. We gotta be smarter than them. So, we started watching. We'd drive up to where AgriCorp had set up their main pumping station, pretending to be checking fences. We'd see the trucks, the pipes, the constant hum of machinery sucking the lifeblood out of our valley. We even saw the permits, tacked up on a board like they were doing everything legal. But old man Hemlock knew better. "There's an aquifer," he told us one night, his eyes gleaming in the dim light of the community hall. "Underneath the whole valley. Been there for centuries. Sustained us through droughts before. They ain't got the rights to that water. Never will." That's when we knew. They weren't just diverting the river, they were tapping into something sacred, something that belonged to all of us. Going through the proper channels was a joke. Mayor Thompson, slicked back hair and a smile that never reached his eyes, was in AgriCorp's pocket. He'd dismiss our concerns with a wave of his hand and a platitude about progress. Judge Reynolds, he looked pained, like he wanted to help, but AgriCorp's lawyers were always breathing down his neck. So, we were on our own. We started meeting at night, in my barn. Just a handful of us, Hank, Sarah, Maria Rodriguez, whose family had farmed here longer than mine, and a few others. We laid out maps, talked about water flow, and whispered about sabotage. It felt like we were planning a war. Sarah, she was the brains of the operation. She knew more about irrigation systems than any engineer. She figured out how they were diverting the water, where the main pipes were, and how we could shut them down. It was a dangerous plan, risky as hell. But we were desperate. Deputy Miller, he'd come by every now and then, asking questions. He knew something was up. He'd been raised in the valley too. His family lost their farm years ago. I think he sympathized with us, but he had a job to do. He'd give us these little warnings, these veiled hints. "Just be careful, Caleb," he'd say, his eyes full of concern. "Don't do anything stupid." One night, AgriCorp security showed up at Hank's place. They said he was trespassing. There was a scuffle. Hank ended up with a broken arm, and they hauled him off to jail. That was the breaking point. We couldn't wait any longer. The ground shook. Sirens wailed in the distance. We scattered like quail, disappearing into the night. The next day, the valley buzzed with rumors. AgriCorp was furious. They threatened lawsuits, arrests, everything. Deputy Miller came by again, his face grim. "Caleb," he said, "I gotta ask you, were you involved in this?" I looked him straight in the eye. I was protecting my family, Deputy. Protecting our home. He sighed. I understand, but I have to do my job. He didn't arrest me. Not that day. The water started flowing back. Slowly at first, a trickle. Then, a steady stream. The fields began to drink, the crops straightened, and a sense of hope returned to the valley. But AgriCorp wasn't going to take it lying down. They sent their lawyers, their investigators, their goons. They tried to intimidate us, to bully us. But we stood our ground. We had the community behind us now. People were donating money, offering support, even coming from out of state to protest AgriCorp's actions. The state authorities started to investigate. They found irregularities in AgriCorp's permits, evidence of illegal water diversions. Mayor Thompson was suddenly unavailable for comment. It all came to a head at the main pumping station. Mr. Sterling, the CEO of AgriCorp, arrived in a black helicopter, looking like he'd just stepped out of a magazine. He was furious. "You can't do this," he shouted, his face red. "You can't just destroy private property. You can't just steal our water," I shouted back, my voice hoarse. "This isn't your playground. This is our home." Deputy Miller arrived, sirens blaring. He stepped between us, his hand on his gun. Everyone, calm down. The standoff lasted for hours. Then the news broke. The state attorney general had filed charges against AgriCorp, against Mayor Thompson, against anyone involved in the water diversion scheme. Mr. Sterling's face went white. He turned and stormed back to his helicopter, leaving his lawyers to clean up the mess. AgriCorp pulled out of Harmony Valley. They abandoned their plans, their projects, everything. The water kept flowing. We paid a price for our actions. Me and Hank and a few others. We faced charges of property damage and conspiracy. We spent some time in jail. But the community rallied around us. They raised money for our legal defense. They took care of our families. They kept the farms going. Old Man Hemlock passed away that winter, a smile on his face. He knew we'd won. Harmony Valley is still struggling. The drought hasn't ended, but we're managing. We're learning to farm smarter, to conserve water, to rely on each other. We're rebuilding, slowly but surely. I stood with Sarah on our porch, watching the sun set over the fields. The water shimmered in the irrigation ditches, a lifeline pulsing through the valley. "Was it worth it?" Sarah asked, her voice soft. I looked at her, at the land, at the community that had stood by us. "Every damn drop," I said.